Given the length of today's proclamation from the Gospel of Mark, which is really the homily, listening to the narrative of the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, this must be the narrative for these days, and how that somehow comes to life in our journey every day. How we sense and feel and connect with the passion and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This must be the spiritual journey, especially of these days. So, in the brief period given to me, we have another Mass coming up immediately following this Mass. And since the Gospel is long, I will, by demand, measure briefly my reflection for today. And the thoughts which I'll offer come from two books recently came into my reading. One, Let Us Dream by Pope Francis. Very interesting book about being sensitive and being connected. The second book is The Triumph Through Failure by a Jesuit theologian named John Navone. So let me collect one or two thoughts from these two books by Pope Francis and John Navone. Pope Francis makes it very clear that in a time of crisis, such as COVID, in a time of crisis, any kind of crisis in our lives, we change. When you emerge from a crisis, you are different. Things change in a time of crisis. A time of crisis measures our hearts. And in this time of COVID, he observes that it's not communication that's missing. We're communicating through Zoom, through email, and through many, many ways in which we are communicating. Contact, that's the crisis in this time of COVID. It's contact, it's not communication. Take a look and you'll see that the first great grace given to a grandparent after the vaccine is to hug the grandchild. We need contact. Not communication, it's contact. I have had many times, and I listen to the children here during the week coming back to school and said, what's the best thing about being back in school? And they said, we want to be with our friends. It's contact. And this is a week in which we celebrate somehow the measure of contact with Jesus Christ in our lives. I've had many times, we were at the 9:30 Mass. Outside of COVID times, we would gather in the church, and at the Our Father, we'd all come together, join hands, and pray as one family. Many times I have heard people come to Holy Family for the 9:30 Mass who hadn't been here before or somehow separated from the church. And they said, but when we came to the Our Father and we all joined hands and we prayed as one family, the connection made me feel I belong, which was a preamble to the Eucharist. And listen to the proclamation today. Jesus says, I take bread, and this is my body, and I give it to you. The consummate statement of contact. This is the cup of my blood. Take this and drink from it. It's my blood. This is my person, and I call you into a profound, faith-filled experience of contact. So how do we enter into these holy days in contact with Jesus Christ? The palms, which are part of our ritual today, these are a symbol of an ancient, pre-Christian ritual that palms were a sign of victory, a sign of power, a sign of glory, a celebration. But Jesus enters Jerusalem on the foal of an ass not some triumphant general coming after a victory at war. It's a victory over the world. It's the power of kindness. It's the power of forgiveness, the power of inclusion. How do we measure a church? You don't measure a church truly in the name of Christ by how much money the church has, nor do we measure a church by how many people are there. We don't measure it by size. You measure an authentic church by depth, by openness, by hospitality, by a sense of connection, by contact. That's the first great teaching of these days. Listen to the invitation of Jesus Christ to belong, to connect in terms of forgiving and belonging and touching and somehow an inclusion, a sense of attachment. Keep this in mind in your families when you come to celebrate Jesus Christ within your families and within your community. John Navona, in his book, says history will record that Jesus was a failure, but faith will record he was a triumph. When you look at history in Jesus Christ, he did not convert the people of Israel. All those closest to him abandoned him. They didn't believe. They thought he was a failure. Until the resurrection, when they experienced a whole new understanding of what it means to triumph over the world. We are called to belong to resurrection. We are called to belong to a power and a sense of triumph which the world does not celebrate. Pope Francis goes on to tell us we have confused power with strength. We have confused success with significance. And when you come to look at Jesus Christ, it's a call to walk in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, to connect somehow with the person of the Lord. And we have many opportunities to do it within our families, within our communities, and within our churches, especially during these holy days, when we will be visited by the blessing of many new persons and new faces, to somehow find a way to draw people in, to bless people, to lift up people's spirit, to give people hope, to call people by name, to understand, to be patient, to forgive. That's what it means to connect with the person of Jesus Christ. It's a new understanding of triumph over the world. So keep this in mind as we journey through these days. Listen to the passion of Jesus Christ, the humility, the suffering. One of the great moments of emptiness during this past year was we have 500,000 people die of COVID. It's a time of great, great poverty, a great sense of pain and loneliness for many. For others, they ignored it. So how do we connect with the Jesus suffering in the present moment, the loneliness, the pain, the struggle of Jesus Christ in these times? That's how we live out, not just listen to the word, but bring the word to life. Go back sometime during this week and take a part of the Passion. Read it, belong to it, reflect on it, pray over it, so that somehow these days of the Paschal mystery will come to life for us. Let that be our prayer during these days. Amen.